Hi everyone, Rob here again from the Better SMB podcast. Hey, today we are interviewing Rachel King, and she did a fantastic job talking about burnout and being curious why. We talked about creating standards and effective routines and stop saying yes to everything. Stop being busy at being busy. And we do that by setting clear priorities through our day, our week. This is a great episode for leaders who want to become more effective and also lead by example. So, anyway, that's enough for me. On with the show, and hopefully, you can pick up a few tips for you and your business. See ya.
Welcome back to the Better SMB, where we're working to become the go-to voice for SMB leaders looking to create high-performing and sustainable businesses. I'm David Alterner.
And I'm Rob Bull.
Our guest today is someone who's helping to redefine what success looks like in business, not through hustle culture, but by teaching leaders how to work at a truly sustainable pace. Rachel King is a leadership and executive coach with a mission to help professionals and teams learn to work at human speed. With a background in stress management, energy optimization, and productivity, Rachel works with individuals and organizations looking to build resilience, boost self-awareness, and ultimately perform at their best without sacrificing health and well-being along the way. She's passionate about shifting the conversation from doing more to doing what matters. And today she's here to help us understand the real cost of our obsession with busyness and what it means to truly thrive in work and life. Rachel, welcome on board. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So in some of the content you sent me through, I found it really interesting. Can you start by painting a picture for us on why New Zealanders are burning out at higher rates than many other countries?
Yeah, well, as you've just said, all across the world, rates of burnout are really high. I think a lot of us really experienced it during COVID. It really brought this kind of concept home that actually we couldn't do it all and we all had limits and we're all really finite humans. But what is really interesting is noting that studies are showing that New Zealanders have higher rates, and I've become quite curious about this. Why are we burning out more than other countries? And my own kind of exploration and curiosity into this topic is pulling up the idea around our personalities as New Zealanders, that we are a real yes culture. We're quite DIY people, right? We like to say yes, we like to help, but saying yes has a cost, and saying yes over and over and over again to a fault is where we burn out. So that's certainly an area that is exacerbating the problem.
Right. And throwing some numbers out there, you mentioned 80% of illness is stress related. So that culture of saying yes to everything and taking on too much, how does stress really impact our health, even when we think we're coping?
If we think about stress as a physiological response, it changes our hormones, it activates our fight-flight response, which is good if we're running away from a tiger in the jungle or we're trying to get ourselves off the road. But when we go into that stressed red brain, it's sometimes called, adrenaline and cortisol surges through our bodies. That's okay for a time, but if we're treating our email as an emergency, if we're treating every request as an emergency, then we're living in this heightened state of stress almost constantly. And, in this digital world of essentially infinite possible demands, we are so prone to being in this state of heightened stress, which leads to burnout, which, as you just said, can cause massive illnesses, issues, heart disease, strokes, all sorts of things correlate with stress.
From your experience, how has the culture of constant busyness, where working fast is seen as working better, impacted not just our workplace performance, but also the broader enjoyment and quality of our lives?
Yeah, well, I guess it's all tied up, isn't it? That
Totally.
if we're saying yes to everything. And just to come back to that question you asked about New Zealanders, I think we're a yes culture, we're a helping culture, and that's great. It's great to be helpful. It's great to help others out. We work in teams. If I'm in a startup, if I'm in a small business, we want to say yes. We want to help each other. But whatever is our strength, when it's overused, becomes our liability, right? So when I'm overusing that strength, that ability to say yes, that ability to help, it's going to trip me up. Something that sits closely alongside that, again, I think with New Zealanders, is that we're quite indirect. The yeah, nah, bro, yeah, nah, that is not a clear statement. And I think that really speaks to New Zealanders who don't very clearly express whether they have capacity or not. We're much more likely to say yes but not mean it. And when we do that repeatedly, we are not recognizing that actually as humans, we're not machines. We can't parallel process things like ChatGPT can. We can only do one thing at a time. And until we recognize our finiteness, we risk just burning out. Some people have higher capacity than others and they can keep going for longer. But all of us as humans are finite. We've got a finite capacity to do stuff, to manage stress, and burnout just sits on the other side of that.
Do you think people even realize the toll that being on all the time is taking on them?
I think we're pretty good at compartmentalizing, aren't we? And I hear clients say that to me all the time. I can compartmentalize my emotions. I don't notice if I'm tired or hungry. Those days that you just are on all day, you kind of hold it together and then you crash. Or maybe it's a week that you're on your go, 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 go mode. And then at the end of the week, you crash for the weekend. Or maybe you do it for the whole year and then you crash. But going and then crashing is not really how humans are made to thrive. If you look at, we're part of the animal kingdom. If you look at animals, like sure, a lion that's chasing its prey is going to run really fast. It's got that capacity. But imagine if it was just running really fast all day and then crashing. It would probably die. Somebody would hunt the lion. So as humans, we've got to find sustainable ways of working. We can be incredible high performers, just like athletes. Athletes have learned how to perform at an incredible pace, but only for a time. They know that they've got to slow down. So how come as workers, we've somehow decided that we don't need to slow down, that we don't need to stop?
So, Rachel, I'll just pop in here, going right back to that DIY culture. And I've written on a number of times around that Kiwi sort of mentality, and we've almost haven't gone past the number 8 wire, she'll be right, we'll just cobble it together, and that's okay. So how does all of that fit into sort of what you're seeing around all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I love our DIY culture, and I love the number 8 wire, the Kiwi that jumps in and does it. There's some real benefits to that, right? And smaller businesses, startups, you've got people that are happy to muck in, and that's great. But it's when people can't see their limits, or maybe when the business grows a little bit and people are sort of still running at that unrealistic and unsustainable capacity. If they get more people onto the team, well, hang on a minute, now I can't do it all because I've got someone else here to help me. So it's when can I shift from going, I needed to be the number 8 wire person who fixed all the things and did all the things, but now I've got this team of people. I've got to learn to say no. I've got to learn to delegate. I've got to learn where my boundaries are. And I often say to people that are yes people, which are a lot of people that I work with, I say every single yes you say has a no attached to it. We can often think, I'm a yes person, I love saying yes, but actually I'm always saying no to something. What are you saying no to? And I say to people, are you saying no to the more important work that you should be doing? Are you saying no to your family? Are you saying no to your health? Are you saying no to another client? Maybe you've jumped in and said yes to a client, but actually you were working with another one. What are you saying no to every single time you say yes?
So it's almost like they haven't, what worked well at the start, particularly, smaller startups and all of that, what worked well when they're a kitchen table kind of organization through to, oh my gosh, I've woken up and I've got a team of 10, 11, 12, but they're still working in that same headspace. They haven't adjusted their style. They haven't adjusted their approach.
Yeah, I think so. And New Zealanders, again, we're good at that. We don't sort of feel an inflated sense of importance generally. We don't, it's not too hierarchical. And so we're kind of happy to muck in. And there's some real benefits to that, to building a positive collaborative culture. But when it comes at that cost of everyone saying yes to everything and no clarity around what's mine to do, what's not, and what do I actually have the capacity to do, then we're going to run ourselves into trouble.
What about at an organisational level? You've been talking around, I guess, the individual piece. I distinctly remember a number of years ago having had that period of being on for quite some time, working across a range of different client projects and so forth. I sat down with my manager and I said to him, I don't recall exactly how I said it, but something like, man, I just feel like I'm burning out. At which point he turned around and said something to the tune of, oh, that's nice. By the way, what are your sales numbers looking like for next month? How do you think we make this a priority across the business, not just that individual level? Because we have this culture and it's right through our businesses. So how do we impact that?
Yeah, really good question. And, again, research shows that 80% of change comes organisationally, like 20% of it is within our power as individuals. And that's great. That's more than zero, right? So there are things that we can do ourselves. But as you've just said, David, like if you've got a boss who is not acknowledging the finiteness of our human capacity, that is not listening, that is tone deaf to someone who's saying, hey, I'm burning out, then it's going to be really challenging. Like, yes, there are things you can do. You can hold your own line. You can say, this is when I'm going to stop my work day. This is when I'm going to switch my phone off. There are things that we can take responsibility for. And, for people who have a boss like that is absolutely ignoring the fact that they're burning out, I would be saying, keep saying that. And if the boss is not hearing, and if you're putting your own boundaries in and it's not working, is this the right place for you? If you are a leader, your team are looking at you. If you're working till midnight every night, if you're working weekends and evenings every day, are you setting that tone for the organisation? And what do you want from your staff? Again, coming back to the athlete analogy, we know that actually there's got to be peaks and troughs, and we will get brilliant performance out of our team when they have seasons and times in the day and, the peaks and troughs within the day and within the week and within the month, that they're working really hard, achieving really well. But where's the rest? Where's the recovery? Leaders that are pushing their team too hard have not aligned with the truth of the fact that just pushing hard all the time isn't going to get more productivity. Our productivity plummets when we are grinding too hard for too long without that rest. We need to see rest as a strategy, not as a reward or as something that lazy people do. It's absolutely essential for high performance.
I reckon Rob just wrote down rest as a strategy, because I did. Yes, so I've got a friend. She was training for the Commonwealth Games, and I actually worked with her partner, and he was telling me she did triple jump or something like that. So for a 20-second sprint or something like that she was training for, it would take her 30 minutes to warm up to do that, and then 20 minutes of rest, start again. I don't remember the exact sequence, but that was that kind of training cycle within the training session to actually help her achieve her best. Now, I've been doing a bit of digging, and in your work you talk around the Industrial Revolution mindset, where we're all just trying to pack widgets in, speed the conveyor belt up, get it going as fast as we possibly can. And you call that outdated thinking. Now, I'm really interested in your perspective on this and how it holds businesses and people back today, especially a lot of our listeners are manufacturers too, right? So it'll be good to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, in the Industrial Revolution, a sign of productivity was literally how many widgets were you pumping out in this factory line. So to be productive meant to produce more widgets. But in 2025, in this knowledge age, how productive I am is not expressed by how many emails I reply to, how many Teams messages, how many pings, this always on and always responding in the moment. To be busy does not make us productive, but the Industrial Revolution made us equate busyness with productivity. We thought if I'm really busy, if I'm busy doing all the things, I must be productive. And COVID really highlighted that and now a lot of this flexible and hybrid working with managers and bosses saying, if I can't see my staff, how do I know that they're actually doing anything? And actually, it should be our output. What we produce is evidence, not just how busy I am, not the fact that I'm just sitting in front of my email like, someone said, on your marks, get set, go, clear your emails, clear your Teams, check your Slack, check your WhatsApp, just go, 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 go. Most of us, our job description does not say check your email all day. But the research shows that the average person checks their emails just around once every minute or so. We're checking our emails. This is wild. How much proper work can we get done when we're checking our email every minute or two?
So that's really one of my favorite books that I read last year was Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, right? That really fits in.
Yeah,
you're nodding.
excellent.
Right.
Yeah.
For the listeners, Rachel's nodding her head. Absolutely, because it is about that thinking and that creativity-based industry now, which really doesn't align with the Industrial Revolution and the classic formula of productivity of inputs over outputs, and that's what we get. Yeah, a lot of our work is in that creativity space. You don't have to be in the marketing industry or all of that kind of stuff, but we are paid to do a lot of thinking, a lot of development, and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, how do you calculate that? And Cal Newport said, well, you don't. So it is outputs. You could be away for weeks and then come back and bang, 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 it comes out.
Exactly. And how many brilliant ideas do you have when you're checking your email and Teams all day? If you think about when you have your best ideas, it's probably in the shower. It's probably when you're just going to sleep. And what's the common denominator? That might be when you're going for a walk. You're not staring at a screen. And we are just oversaturated. Most of us have 3 or 4 screens in front of us all the time, and they're all pinging us every moment. And a couple of illustrations of this I love. One is that Lin-Manuel Miranda came up with the idea for the musical Hamilton when he was on holiday, not when he was sitting in front of a screen. The other one that's almost even more powerful was back in the 90s, a train broke down on the way to Clapham Junction in London. And this was the 90s. There was no smartphones. You just sat on the train, right? And there was a passenger on that train who was stuck on that train for 4 hours with the train not moving. And that passenger was J.K. Rowling. And she came up with the whole plot of Harry Potter in those 4 hours. If she had a smartphone, we wouldn't have Harry Potter. In terms of what is meaningful productivity, how can we be more productive? Yes, we're in this digital age. Of course, we have to be plugged in and switched on. But if you've got to do thinking, if you've got to come up with ideas, most of us, strategy, thinking, planning, being on the business versus in the business, we've got to be carving out space and time that, as you've said, Rob, doesn't necessarily look on the outside like we're quote unquote busy, but actually we could be doing really powerful work in that space. It might just take time.
Something we'll be getting to soon, the important work over the urgent work. The cost for teams and organizations is, in a way, they probably don't even realize that they're prioritizing being busy over being genuinely effective.
Busyness is a status symbol. If you bump into someone and they say, how are you going? What's the first thing you say? You say, I'm busy. And if you didn't say you were busy, you've sort of just admitted that you've got a disease. If you said, I'm not busy, the person will look at you like there's something wrong with you. So we have equated busy with importance. If I'm busy, I have value. I'm a valuable member of society. And what's really interesting is before the Industrial Revolution, to have leisure time meant that you were important and of high status. You know, if you had more leisure time than the peasants, you were more important. Whereas now we see busyness, it's completely flipped. We see busyness as high status. If we have this mindset and this addiction to busyness, we're not going to change. We thrive on it, you know. And so I go into workplaces, and as you've just said, David, teams don't even notice that they're just busy spinning their wheels. We think that this is the water that we're swimming in, so we don't even notice that actually there could be a better way. So my goal is to come in there and cut through those mindsets and help people realize that actually just spinning your wheels, splashing is not swimming, right? Let's do the stuff that actually moves the needle.
We had a chat about this on last week, David, when we were catching up to prepare for all of this episode. I was trying to Zoom appointment with someone, and it's like, it will be until June, you know, what we're recording this in May, but, you know, in June. And you went, I'll trump that. I've got someone who gave me a 15-minute block in October, you know, 3, 4, 5 months out. And I was just mind blown about no one can be or should be that busy. And I love that. It is a status symbol. And I feel sorry for people like that. I really do.
Who's suffering? You know, is it their partner? Is it their family? Is it their children? Those around them will come to realize they're just not available. And, you know, I've got 3 kids. They're 3 teenagers now. They're still at home. And I want to be around for them. I don't want life just to fly by and, you know, and not be available. So there's seasons that times are busier, quote unquote, but also actually I intentionally make time and space so that I can, you know, I think balance can be a funny word when people talk about work-life balance, but it's more, there's ebbs and flows, right? So some seasons you might feel like your life is quite full. And I'm okay with that. But actually, where is that rest? Where is that recovery? So it's not that everything's this perfect linear equilibrium at all times, but it's tuning in to your own capacity, to your body, to your mind, to your emotions, what's happening for me, rather than all energy out, just into output, and not noticing my own body as a human and what I can manage.
So you've got an approach to support leaders to move from a world of burnout to a level of being highly productive. And what I found really quite interesting with this is you change your terminology and you move from talking about people being busy to people being addicted to urgency. So what are some of the signs that people might just happen to a little bit, maybe a lot, but be addicted to urgency and they don't even realize it?
Yeah, well, I think on the back of what we've talked about around busyness, there are people that will say to me, I love being busy. I love interruptions. I love it. I thrive on it. I thrive on the unexpected, the chaos, the unpredictability. And I say to them, yeah, I get it. You'll be getting dopamine hits. And there was a study called the mere urgency effect, that just because something's urgent doesn't mean it's important, but that we equate it as such. We're very prone to putting a value on something that has a sense of urgency. And the irony is that the busiest people do that even more. So once you've got the urgency addiction, once you're caught in that spiral, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything that comes along, you'll jump on it. It's, you know, I say, of course, for all of us, there are genuine urgencies that come along in a day. And those are like the little mini fire alarms. I call them code reds, little light flashes, and we have to deal with those things. The problem is when you treat everything as a code red, when every email that comes is an emergency, when every time your phone rings or pings, you grab it. Maybe you're in the middle of a meeting with someone, but you still can't help flicking your eyes to your phone or to your Teams because you think maybe that's just a little bit more urgent than what you're doing right now. The first thing is to admit an addiction to urgency. We cannot change what we're not aware of. So if we don't have an awareness, and if you don't want to change it, you're not going to. So if so that's where I tell people about the stats around the impacts on our health, physical, mental, emotional health of stress. It's killing us. It's literally killing us. So if we want to reduce that, we've got to acknowledge that it's a problem and then think, okay, what am I going to do about it?
I posted on LinkedIn a while ago a TED talk by this guy, just got it here, Martin Gutman, and he talked about why we celebrate incompetent leaders. And his whole thing was, we're always celebrating the leaders who the plan's going down and they managed to save it and all this sort of thing. And I think his example was Ernest Shackleton, who tried to lead a number of expeditions to, I think it was Antarctica, and didn't manage to get any of them over the line and actually complete them. And in fact, I don't even remember the name of the guy that they talk about that over the same period got to Antarctica 4 times, got back perfectly fine. And his talk effectively celebrated this idea of boring leadership. And it's very countercultural. But with that in mind, how do you think a business owner or a business leader can start moving towards that world of almost boring leadership where things are planned, they're anticipated, instead of having that urgency addiction, maybe not necessarily in themselves, but certainly in their teams?
Yeah, really good question. And it does obviously start with the leader having, an absolutely crystal clear compass of where they're wanting to lead their team. Like, where are you steering this ship? And then every single thing that everyone on your team is doing, does it align with that? If it doesn't, you're prone to be getting pulled into that busy work, into that urgency, filtering everything through that question. Where are we wanting to go as a team? Where are we steering this together? And so, in terms of that idea of boring leadership, so yes, there's going to be little things that might go wrong on this ship that we're sailing, like Shackleton was trying to sail, to use that analogy. And we can deal with those. We can plan for the things that might come up, but I don't need to panic. I don't need to, if I'm a leader who's really fueled by urgency, that's the culture that I'm going to breed. And I'm also going to celebrate it, right? I'm going to reward the people that are racing around. They're going to look busier and I'll reward that, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. But if I'm really, as a leader, calmly focused on where I'm heading and acknowledging that stuff's going to go wrong and that we'll deal with it as it comes, but that I'm not rewarding that, I'm not celebrating that as the goal. The goal is to get where we're going, to keep my boat pointed in the same direction no matter what storms come along.
Moving out of being aware of what's going on and then getting into the prioritization side of things, you recommend using the Eisenhower matrix. I'd be interested in why you're focused on that, but also how does it help busy professionals just filter what's truly important versus what isn't important and just urgent things, for example?
Yeah. What I love about the Eisenhower matrix is it's like something that you can have in your pocket. It's like a little mental grid that you can filter. If you think of the number of inputs and demands and requests and emails and messages and meetings and shoulder taps that are coming at you on any one day, it's an overwhelming number of possible things that you could be doing, right? So we've got to have something that we can very quickly pull out of our pocket and use to filter every single input that's coming at us. We've got to essentially triage. I talk to people about triaging as if, you're in the emergency room and you've got to triage. And emergency rooms, they know how to triage really well. And they're not flapping around in chaos. They are calmly triaging and they're getting on with things and they are saving lives. And so we've got to learn to calmly triage all these inputs that are coming at us. And so for anyone who doesn't know the Eisenhower matrix, it's a really simple grid with 4 boxes that breaks things into the first quadrant is urgent and important. And so that is what I call the code reds, the things that we have to do. We've got to allow space and acknowledge the fact that plans change. And research shows that the average person has around 2 hours a day of those unplanned interruptions. So if you've planned 8 hours of your day to the last minute, you're going to be constantly on the back foot, you're going to be frustrated, you're going to feel like everything gets derailed. So the number one for managing code reds is to allow space in your day to absorb those, whether you leave white space in your calendar or whether you actually mark it out as some sort of buffer to remind yourself. You can call it task time or code reds or unplanned, whatever you want to call it. We obviously don't know when they're going to come. And sometimes you have a week of code reds, right? But just acknowledging them and being kind to yourself when they come along, because otherwise we live in that constant frustration. So that's the first quadrant. The second quadrant is our non-urgent but important work. Now, where those code reds have a little fire alarm on them, right? It's like a little flashing light and you jump in. Our non-urgent but important work does not shout at us. There's no flashing lights. This is our meaningful work. This is my project work. This is the strategic thinking, the planning, the big picture stuff, the working with clients, the building relationships. That stuff will never muscle its way in if you don't intentionally plan for it. It doesn't have a little siren going off. So this is the one that suffers the most when we're pulled into urgency addiction. So just to describe that third quadrant, which is the one that is pulling us away from the what I call the zone of impact, our important work. So the quadrant of urgent but not important, this is the killer. This is what I call the false alarms, right? So where our code reds are our true fire alarms, these false alarms are those imagined urgencies. It's the person that comes and says, can you do this? I just need you to do this. And you jump on it and you say yes. You don't pause. You don't think about whether it really matters. And you just, when you get to the end of a day and you feel frantic and you've been busy all day, but you think, what have I actually done? Chances are you've been pulled into the spiral of those false alarms, what I call the zone of busy work, full of false alarms. And while you're caught in there saying yes to everything down there, that important but not urgent work, the zone of impact, is getting completely neglected. So what is absolutely critical for us is that we pause before saying yes to what is possibly a false alarm, work out if it's a true fire alarm or a false alarm, and learn to say no. Sounds simple, doesn't it? It's not always as easy as that. And just to cover off the 4 quadrants for anyone who's thinking you've only talked about 3. The 4th quadrant, not urgent, not important. The zone of distraction, that's often where we go for the time wasting. Sometimes if we've been caught up in the urgency, we're so stressed and so burnt out, we just go and scroll mindlessly or just do the menial things that don't matter. But most of us, and a lot of the audience listening will be really high performers. Most of them, that's not where they get pulled and caught out. The zone they get caught out is those false alarms, the urgent but not important. So that's where I focus a lot of my attention, is how do we move, what I say, move above the line, move to the top half of the quadrants, and really focus on that work that matters and that adds value.
One question I get business owners that I work with, particularly to push back on that third quadrant, right, is just ask their team members. One simple question is, what 3 things have you tried? And they cannot come to you until they can answer that question.
I love it. Yeah.
Because it really tests the urge. And I think right at the start, you said, are they really urgent? Probably not. So what things have you tried?
Yeah.
Or what 3 things?
Exactly. And I say to people, the building's probably not on fire, right? If the building's on fire, someone will tap you on the shoulder and you'll get out of the building. But and you've just spoken, Rob, exactly the fact that often those urgent but not important, it's other people's urgencies. It's us getting caught up and solving other people's problems. And as leaders, of course, as leaders, it's our job to come alongside and support and inspire. But if we're just firefighting all day and we're doing everyone else's job for them, then who's doing our job?
Yeah. I had a client last week as well, very simple. Like I work on a priority matrix, not the pure Eisenhower, but also with a client last week, they talked about priority 1s, 2s, and 3s. Yeah, they're kind of a call center, service center organization. And I just paused there because their priority 1 list, the top urgent list, was really long. And I just looked around the team and went, have we actually sat down and defined, do we have a single definition of what priority 1, or, and in this, your language, what urgent is? And I don't think teams actually spend the time going, okay, so what is urgent? What are the items that actually make an urgent issue? And spend an hour brainstorming it, but get absolutely real clarity around what urgent is, because we use these terms and they become white noise.
Exactly. And, again, it's for leaders to give that real clarity, like you say, Rob, to brainstorm with their team. So we're all in it together, and now we're all crystal clear on what is the stuff that we've agreed that we need to drop everything and jump in on. And then there's no confusion, there's no questions, and there's way less of that time wasting. And then, and equally, are we crystal clear on what is the important work that I need to be focusing on right now? There's often a lot of, people who have come to me and I say, what are your key projects? What are your things that are your most important focus right now? And people will write a list of 20 things. And I say, okay, great. You can't focus on 20 things across a day or a week or a month or a quarter. So what are your top 3? And it might be 1 to 3. And people say, I can't just narrow it down to 3. And I say, well, you're going to have to, because if you have 5 priorities, you've got no priorities. So just, and sometimes people say, how do you choose? How do you choose which 3? And I say, well, either maybe it's clear, it's just really obvious to you which are the top 3 right now. If you're not clear, ask your manager. Or if you are the manager, decide, pick 3. If those both fail, just pick 3. If your boss doesn't know, and if you don't know, just pick 3 and focus on them. And just that simple act will narrow your focus and give you a lot better chance to not be leaping around from project to project and thought to thought. Office workers change windows every 37 times an hour. And if we're pinging around like that, how the heck do we get any important work done?
If everything's important, nothing is.
Exactly.
So I'm going to put the spotlight on you now, Rachel. What are your personal techniques or rituals that help you stay focused on what's important?
Yeah, good question. And I am, as much as the next person, in this digital world where, we're wildly inundated by technology and distraction. So a huge one for me, what I've just talked about, is having 1 to 3 key pieces of work that I focus on any one time. And I use digital lists and things, but I'm very visual. I've got 3 little post-it notes on my wall beside my computer with what are my 3 key focuses right now. If that has to change, if I realize that a different project's come along that's more important, take one off the wall and I put a different one on. So there are only 3. So when in my time that I've set aside for my important work, I cannot be doing anything but one of those 3. If I am, I ask myself what the heck I'm doing. And if it is more important, what am I deprioritizing? So that would be my first thing, is being really clear on what my focus is across a week. It could change to the next week, but just not having any more than 3 spots. Our brains just can't cope with. We've got so much information. We've got to simplify it. And then the second thing I do is notice for myself how I focus best and when. Most people focus best in the morning. Our energy is better. Our creativity is better. Our problem solving is better. There's been loads of research across all these areas. Our willpower is higher in the morning. So I generally try and protect time in the morning. I run all day workshops with teams, and so obviously then I'm not doing my project work. But if it's a day that I've got client meetings and I'm doing other ad hoc work, I do my deep work, my high level thinking in the morning, and I'll do my best to protect my time until around 11 or 12. And obviously that flexes. I don't think any plan, there's no point being a slave to a plan. So if a client can't meet me any other time, I'll obviously flex. But that's my best rule of thumb, is working, putting my energy in to the morning when it's good. And then turning off email, turning off Teams, turning my phone over. My phone, I'm pretty good. Some people absolutely, their phone pinging is like a lolly shop. It's just advertised free lollies and they can't help it. That's not too distracting for me. If it was, I'd put it in another room, so I'll do whatever I need to do. And then I also acknowledge, if I've set aside a couple of hours that I'm writing a new workshop or working on something, I don't have to sit at my desk for a solid 2 hours without moving. Humans are, we're mammals. We like movement. We like nature. So I'll get up and go outside. I'll often go for a 5-minute walk when I get stuck. Research shows that we're more creative when we're walking than sitting still. So I give myself permission to get up and move my body and do something else for a little bit. I don't hold myself religiously to sitting in the chair for an endless amount of time. Yeah, and some days it works really well. Some days I get great work done, and sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, where is my brain today? We're human, and I'm pretty kind to myself. As I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 kids. They will, pull on your brain power at the best of times, and they do increase the mental load, all the things that I'm juggling. Yeah, those would be some of the main things that I do. Get my important work done.
Now, you mentioned about understanding yourself and when your times for deep work are.
Yep.
So how does understanding your own work patterns and then using tools like, I think you work with Enneagram, help firstly improve your chances of burnout, but then secondly, how does that improve team dynamics?
Yeah, so it's really essential that we understand ourselves, that we understand why we do what we do, that we understand who triggers us, why they trigger us, why we work well in some environments and not others. Because no plan is one size fits all. Humans are complex. You can't plot a human on a spreadsheet, right? So I really do love working with teams around, and the tool that I use is called Enneagram, which digs a lot of personality tools look at behaviors, how we show up on the outside. But Enneagram digs deeper and looks at why do you do what you do, what motivates you. And again, what I talked about earlier around awareness, we can't change what we're not aware of. So when I work at that deeper level, if you think of a plant, if you're trying to improve the performance of a plant that's growing by polishing the leaves, you're not going to get very far. But if you dig down into the root system and you look at what's happening with the roots and the soil, that's the level of the why of us as humans. So when I help people dig down to their why and understand themselves, then their output, how they are on the outside, that's where we can get change. And back to your question around how does that help us in our productivity, it can help us figure out simple things like, if I'm a yes person, why am I saying yes to everybody? And when I work at that deeper level and I give myself permission to say no, and I know that actually my value doesn't come from all the yeses, that I won't die if I say no to someone, then I can start to shift and create space there. If I know that I'm someone who's more energized working independently, then I obviously know that I'm part of a team and I'm collaborating, but I potentially need to energize myself. I need to find a space to work by myself, to work really well. So Enneagram is really foundational. It's like working in the root system. And then when we've got understanding of that, all this other stuff just clicks and makes sense. It's really like a framework that helps us understand the lens that we see the world through, and then fit the pieces of the puzzle in the right way for us. And another way that we can think about it in terms of finding my own work patterns and my own ability to do deep work is around something like neurodiversity, where, for the average person, they can potentially set aside around an hour and a half for focus work. People are often asking me, how much time should I put on my calendar? And I say, well, a block of an hour and a half can be really good. But if you have ADHD, or even if your brain kind of, you think you might have ADHD-ish kind of fast brain processing, you might need to set aside 30 minutes in your calendar and then get up and do a 5-minute walk or break, and then another 30-minute burst, the Pomodoro, the little short sprint kind of technique. So knowing yourself, knowing your own patterns is absolutely essential for landing this stuff. So I'm not just going to say, do it this way. I'm passionate about people tailoring it so it's actually going to be sustainable for them.
Awesome. I think you've managed to tick a few boxes on a bunch of these questions that I had here for you, just with what you've covered off there. I guess talking about this at an individual level, but from a leadership angle, how can leaders create environments that support better energy management for their teams, taking into account neurodiversity, taking into account that someone's wired a little bit differently, right? So it's not just about the leader, but it's about their team.
Yeah, well, I think once a leader knows and has a bit of a roadmap for how their different team members show up, it changes everything. When I work with leaders and their teams, and we understand their different Enneagram type and how they show up differently across the team, all these light bulbs go on. Suddenly I'll get a leader saying, oh, okay, so when I'm giving you a project, if I'm presenting it to you in this way, this is not working for you, this is not landing, you need me to do it this way. And we just open up these incredible conversations where there's no blame, there's no one right way or wrong way, but suddenly there's this acknowledgement and celebration of difference and diversity, and actually this idea and realization that there's power in that difference, where the world would be a boring place if we were all the same. So for leaders to really push in, and there's all sorts of tools out there around personality, and really digging into that and going, actually, how can I understand each of my team members? And obviously there's things that are gonna be, go across no matter what the personality. There's certain frameworks and ways, and we talked earlier about clarity. Giving good clarity across the team is essential, so everybody knows what are we actually aiming for as a team, what's important. But then within that, giving individuals freedom to do something in a way that might not be the same way that the leader thinks is the best way. It's that good delegation, isn't it? Delegating with some freedom and with scope and with trust. And we can only really trust people when we start to get to know them as humans and see a little bit below the surface. Again, recognizing the uniqueness and the humanity in us all, rather than seeing us as just tools in this corporate machine that's there to produce, which of course we want, and that will happen when we celebrate people as humans. Then humans that feel valued will thrive, they'll produce, they'll do great work, and then it's a win-win for all of us.
If more businesses and leaders embraced working at human speed, what's your vision for how work and life could look different in the future?
I mean, the word for me that sums it up is thriving. And actually, just to add a second word would be flourishing. Humans, we're designed to thrive and to flourish. And I guess a lot of my analogies compare us to the natural world, to plants and to animals. And because we are human creatures that are sort of masquerading as robot tools that sit in front of machines a lot of the time. But actually, if we can reset and reestablish good rhythms, and technology is here to help us achieve great things, and it already has, and it's amazing, but we are humans working alongside that technology. We're not machine working alongside machine. So thriving humans doing meaningful work at a sustainable pace is really my vision, and I think it's possible when we acknowledge our own finiteness as humans and acknowledge that in others and celebrate it as well.
I like it.
So, Rachel, what a lot of things or aspects that you've been talking about tonight, I link to the work that I do with lean thinking, and particularly the connection with what we call in the lean world leader standard work. So it's creating a standard for the leader. So if I'll just summarize what I think I've heard from you today, kind of in my language, and just see if this all aligns nicely, because it's all about slowing down, prioritizing. Like, I get my managers, owners, business leaders literally to put out their time management 101. You show me your diary and print it all out. And if we didn't hit their plan for the week, we problem solved why, because they might have been dragged out into those fire alarms. So it's blocking out time for strategy. It's blocking out time to look at business performance, the operations, the urgent and the important. I tend to even stay away from urgent, because I even problem solve, why was it urgent? Let's solve it. Continuous improvement. So it's really a nice picture about hearing how, from another aspect, how people are addressing that and giving tips around just prioritizing your time, creating that standard. Slowing down, I think, is an important one for me, and just focusing on the important activities.
Absolutely. And, we can't achieve great things at speed, right? Some of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world took hundreds of years to build, but we've really got ourselves, we've talked about urgency addiction. We're also addicted to speed, aren't we? And we sort of see that as winning. But as you say, Rob, we can't, we've got to slow down to get into that deep work mode. Interestingly, if you go for a run and you're going quite fast, you can't do as much thinking like as if you go for a walk. You have more ideas, you think, like, you percolate, you probably come up with solutions to problems. So there's a direct sort of image right there. When you're running, your body's kind of powering along, and you're probably focusing on getting through the run and, your muscles and your tiredness. Whereas if you slow it down, you can actually start to dig in and percolate. And it's the same with our work. If we slow down, we go to that deeper level where we can come up with brilliant humans. We've got brilliant minds. We can problem solve, we can innovate, we can do great things, and we don't have to do great things fast. We can, great things take time.
Absolutely. And I know when we don't have a client facing day, we're sitting in our office that we've got at Waikato Innovation Park, and I'll be like the Pomodoro method, that you reflected to, absolutely use that all the time. Kind of hit 40 minutes max. And I know, even going for a 5-7 minute, I've got this little walk around the block that I use, particularly on a nice day. And that next 15 minutes is so functionally awesome, because I've just let things sort of jiggle around in my mind and just gone for a walk, said hi to a couple of people, then get back into the screen and going, right, next 15 minutes is real good. Just go through that Pomodoro cycle. So absolutely enjoying the conversation.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So have I. It's, love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it all day long. Great to talk about it with people who are on the same page.
So, Rachel, I guess just wrapping up now, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, my website is quotient.nz, which is QUOTIENT.nz. Got my contact details there, and always happy to have a conversation. I'm on LinkedIn, always keen to talk productivity, to talk meaningful, sustainable productivity with anyone else who's keen, or even if you're not keen, happy to thrash it out with you. I can always, iron sharpens iron, right? So it's debate is a good thing.
Absolutely. Do you have a way to help an overwhelmed leader take the first step if they go to your website? Do you have a press here if you're overwhelmed offer or something along those lines that listeners can either take advantage of or pass to their boss?
At the moment, it's contact me and let's talk about it. So I guess because I'm not a one-size-fits-all person, I haven't created a one-size-fits-all solution, but always happy to have a chat. And, I can work on those one-size-fits-all downloadable resources as well, because I know that's what we love, right? We like a quick fix. Here's the 3 keys to solving all our problems.
and the magic pill.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. In this episode, we've explored the critical issue of burnout and its impact on our productivity in New Zealand's business landscape. Rachel shared insights into why Kiwis are more prone to overworking, highlighting that our yes culture and tendency to prioritise busyness over meaningful work is holding us back. We've talked about the Industrial Revolution's productivity mindset and how it's outdated, and how modern success requires understanding personal energy, setting clear priorities, and recognising rest as a strategic tool. For me, some of my key takeaways have been urgency is not the same as importance. Leaders should focus on only 3 key priorities. Understand your own work patterns and energy. Rest is a performance strategy, not a reward. And saying no is crucial for sustainable productivity. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.